welcome back to the show. I am Matt Yake, the Helpful Home Inspector, and we are here in our Hartford studio with a special guest, Mr. Bill Moeller, back again. Bill is a loan advisor, would be your technical?
You could say loan officer, mortgage advisor.
Loan officer, mortgage advisor at the Bank High Five. Sorry, that's Bank 59. Bank 59, you can look up Bill. BillTheBanker.com, yes. I believe, is the website. Bill would be happy to help you out. He's just a great wealth of knowledge, and today he's going to drop some knowledge bombs on us to help you maintain and take care of your house. I think we got a really good topic today. I think it's something that everybody deals with. Absolutely every single one of you deals with this, and we're going to get into it. Today, our main topic is going to be talking about household debt and how we can manage household debt.
Absolutely.
We'll give you some tips and tricks with some of that stuff. And then also relate it to credit score and mortgages and loan products.
Dovetail in some things that are kind of common to the challenges people are going through with higher costs of everything around them.
Yeah. So we're going to get all that stuff. A lot of great stuff coming up. As we start every show, we talk about the defect of the week. So the defect of the week this week, I'm going to kind of mix it up a little bit. I originally just planned one, which I'm going to get into, but I got a couple of things we're going to talk about as well during this period. Now, as far as our defect of the week, the first one is going to be talking about non-professional craftsmanship. Non-professional craftsmanship. What does that mean to you, Bill?
I think it's weekend mechanic, weekend electrician, watch the YouTube video. Now I'm an expert.
DIY was a common three-letter acronym that gets used a lot. Do it yourself. There are some things that it's okay to do yourself in your home, but there are other things that it's not. When it comes to DIY, there are some things that I would recommend you never DIY without proper knowledge, okay? And this is important because these are safety things. These are things where people can die. You can burn down your house. You can blow yourself up or electrocute yourself and send yourself to the hospital, okay? So there are things that we recommend you not mess with, okay? Number one is gas. Anything with gas. I wouldn't do anything.
Write that down. Gas.
Write that down. Don't mess with gas. Any type of gas, propane, anything like that. You end up with a minorly loose connection because you thought it was tight. You didn't smell anything or whatever, and you went about your way. And then later on that night, you and your wife are sitting around the kitchen table, which we've heard stories of this. People just sitting around watching TV or whatever, and all of a sudden, poof, and the walls knock out or whatever, and the whole inside of the house is engulfed in flame. Granted, usually momentarily because the flame happens so...
It's like a flash.
Yeah, it's a flash burn. It happens so quickly and it usually goes out real quickly, but it can cause a lot of injury or death in the event that that kind of thing occurs. And gas is not something to mess with. So even if you're just hooking up your stove, if you're hooking up a water heater or whatever that may be, you want to make sure that you have a perfectly tight connection there. And if you don't know how to do that properly, you can cause a lot of damage or personal injury. So I'd avoid gas, okay? Anything with gas, I would probably leave to the professionals. Also, if something happens or whatever, they're there, they can correct it, they can fix it. And if something catastrophic happens, they have insurance, whether your insurance covers stupidity or not, I have no idea, but it's something that you probably don't want to mess with. Okay. The next one is dealing with electrical. So when it comes to electricity, there are things that are okay to do on your own. Putting in a light, replacing an outlet. Sure. Going in your electrical panel, as soon as you take a screw off that electrical panel downstairs, you've just made a mistake, okay? Because inside that electrical panel is 240 volts at 200 amps or 100 amps, whatever you have in your house. And one touch of your screwdriver to the wrong thing, and it could send you to the hospital or send you to the Never Never Land where you don't come back again. It's not really something to play around with, okay? So going to your electrical panel, you really need to know exactly what you're doing, okay? If you're going to replace a light, you're going to replace an outlet, you're going to put a GFCI in, your wife wants fancy landscape lighting outside, whatever it may be.
Put a dimmer switch in. Yeah, I got a little tickle once, and my father-in-law really picked on me for that.
Yeah, you can get a tickle, but you can also get a good shock too. In all honesty, when it comes to electricity, 1 milliamp passing across your heart, okay, from your finger touching it to touching something else, 1 milliamp passing across your heart can give you a heart attack.
Really?
Yep. And so not something to mess around with. But when it comes to electrical work or whatever, you want to get an electrical sniffer. So it's a little thing, you push the button on it or whatever, and it tells you if there's electricity there or not. That's the only way to guarantee that there's no electricity in that area or not. You can go down to the breaker, you read on the breaker panel, it says bedroom, upstairs bedroom, and you flip it off.
You think it's the only thing that's controlling it, and there's something more.
Yeah, there's something else, and at that point you go up there and you start working on it, and then you find out that breaker was labeled improperly, or it was wiring up for something else, or whatever it may be. Okay, not worth taking the risk. Lots of times when we're at home and we see improper gas connections or improper electrical work or improper construction period, like somebody building a bathroom and putting an electrical panel in it, not allowed because it's not allowed by code and safety and all these other types of reasons. But when you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing wrong at the same time. And so you can screw up a lot of stuff. And this person had spent, what do you spend remodeling a bathroom these days? 20 grand?
20, 30 G's.
Yeah, easily, right?
Doesn't take much.
Doesn't take much. And now they have this electrical panel in their $30,000 bathroom that they spent or whatever and didn't get a building permit for whatever. And now we either have to pay $6,000 to move the electrical panel, or this is no longer a bathroom and you wasted $30,000
because it's a big code violation.
Yeah. And with electrical panels, you can only move them a certain distance away from where the entrance comes into the home and all that kind of stuff. 10 feet is normally the limitation, but it's, you can make a lot of mistakes or whatever. And when I'm going through a home inspection and I'm calling out defects, okay, you not doing it well, I'm not just talking about you screwing up a piece of trim. Okay. I'm talking about blatant, non-professional construction, evidence that there's no building permits pulled, like for whether if it's like a deck, if you don't build your deck to code or basic safety standards, you take a bunch of people out on there, and next thing you know,
like 80 people in Madison going on a pier.
Gosh, that was crazy. Did you see some of the pictures? I'm like, my gosh. It can be all kinds of stuff, but ultimately, when you're doing that kind of stuff, it's going to cost somebody a bunch of money to fix or correct what you're doing wrong. And in most cases, it's going to be you. You think you're saving $1, right? But you're actually spending $30,000. You know what I mean? Because it just doesn't work out that way. So if you're going to do it yourself, educate yourself, get building permits. The building permit process, and in some cases, like some municipalities, they want you to get a building permit to put a garbage disposal in. Yeah. They just want $35 from you for that.
Let's be real.
Yeah, let's be real. But there are other times when it comes to building your deck, doing your electrical, other type of things. These are your protection to make sure that you're not going to have a problem. Make sure that it's not going to be an issue.
I remember when we got a new dishwasher and purchased it from a local retailer, and they wanted us to pull a permit for used to use a switch on the wall to turn on off the dishwasher, and now it's an outlet underneath the sink, and the inspector wanted to come and see it.
At least he's going to make sure it's wired properly and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yep. And it's a level of protection. I mean, yes, it cost you $30 or whatever it was, and it's kind of a pain waiting for the dude and having the appointment and all that kind of stuff. Yep. But it's going to make sure that you're not going to have an electrical issue or electrical problem, where if you do it on your own, you're kind of rolling the dice sometimes, So make sure you're properly educated. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you get a building permit. Have that level of security. Plus, also, when you go to sell your house, guess what? That's going to
people ask these questions.
Yeah, people ask these questions. They'll go to the municipality, and anybody can find out what building permits have been pulled for your home. It's public knowledge. It is not required that they get your permission to look up if building permits are pulled for things or evidence or things at your house. So if you have a whole finished basement and people are touring your home, bet you dollars to donuts, one of those 52 people are going to go to that municipality, and they're going to ask for if there was any building permits pulled for this property, and they're going to know that you didn't do the plumbing properly, you didn't do electrical properly, you probably didn't do the framing properly.
A lot of liability there.
Yeah, and
you don't disclose that in the condition report, and you go to closing and they don't ask for an inspection. Now you got a big can of worms on your hands.
Yeah, you got a big problem. Yeah, and then from the building permit perspective, usually what they'll let you do is get post permits, But then they usually are a fine associated with, like, they'll say 3 times the original permit fee, as long as we can see what we need to see. If we can't, they can, and if you're
open up the wall.
Yeah, if you're not nice to them, they're gonna say, "Hey, open it up, take it apart. I got to be able to see what you did," And you're like, your heart just drops. You know what I mean? And it's just you stop yourself from having these types of problems. And in most cases, going down to get the building permit, they're not asking for a ton of stuff. They just want to know what your basic plan is. You could sketch it up on a piece of notepaper. They don't care. Yeah. They want to know, hey, you want 5 outlets here, and you're putting in this appliance, whatever that may be. So just work with them and do it the right way. Get yourself educated. The 16-year-old kid at Home Depot, God bless you for working at Home Depot and working and having a job and making some money. But you can't trust their advice. Okay, they're looking at the products or whatever, and you'll go to the Home Depot. Oh yeah, these flexi drains, they work great. You can put them wherever you want.
Yep.
But you shouldn't be using that in your house. Okay, so the 16-year-old kid, great for some things, not great for other things, and really trust the experts when you're trying to educate yourself. So
absolutely,
that's our defect of the week. So non-professional construction work or non-professional work in your home can cost you lots of money and cause you a lot of headaches. So try to avoid it whenever possible. If you're going to do it, if you're going to do work in your home, you need to always do it to a professional manner, to professional standards is what they're looking for. All right. The next thing we got is save a buck today. And what we're going to suggest you do in the next 2 weeks is aerate and overseed your lawn. Here in Wisconsin, we've had a pretty big drought. Actually, it's southern half of Wisconsin. And the trees are already starting to turn color, even though the sun.
Leaves are starting to fall off the trees prematurely, too.
Prematurely because of the drought and stuff going on. Yeah. So one of the things to make sure that your lawn comes back healthy next year is to aerate and overseed. Okay. So you're going to aerate the lawn, and then you're going to walk around, you're going to spread a bunch of seed. You know, the picture of the guy with the satchel, and he's got a beer in one hand, he's spraying seed with the other. Hey, make that you for a Saturday. Okay. The rental of the aerating machine, not very that expensive, $45-$50 or whatever, you know, you won't need it for more than 3
You go to
hours.
Some of the companies that apply fertilizers, they want to get $100-$150 sometimes to bring an aerator out and do the job.
Yep, exactly. But you know, if you look at the ability for you to do it yourself, you can rent it at the rental store for $45-$50 or whatever. And if you need it for 2 or 3 hours, I'd be surprised. It's not. It goes a lot faster than you think. You know.
Yep.
So go out, aerate, and overseed your lawn. It's going to make your lawn come back better next year. You actually might get some grass seed popping up in October. September, October. You know, a little bit depending on how much rain we get here. You know, but that seed's going to sit there, and even if it doesn't germinate and start growing this fall, it's going to grow and germinate next
eventually.
Spring. Yeah, for sure. So that is our Save a Dollar today. Main topic of the day, we're talking about managing household debt, helping people manage it, but also understand it a little bit, because some people, I think that they kind of go through it and they're like, I have a bill to pay, but they don't really understand why that bill is what it is and what's happening behind all that. When you talk about a household, there's all different kinds of debt that you carry in your household in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Now, most homes in the United States carry some sort of a mortgage. Okay, probably what?
63%.
Is this 63%?
I'm not making that up.
Okay, so Bill's got the numbers here. So 63% of the people in the United States carry a mortgage, and mortgages come in all different shapes and sizes, whether it be FHA, VA, whatever, you know.
Conventional.
Conventional. They're going to have some of the same basic building blocks, you know, and understanding those different building blocks and the differences between the different, ways you can do it is important. But we also are going to get into some of the just different types of debt that we carry as Americans, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's not to say that other countries are different or anything like that. They all carry a lot of these same types of situations, you know.
Just variances of the same stuff.
Yep. In America, we do tend to be a little bit more debt friendly, I think, than other countries do.
Just the philosophy on having debt.
And having debt is kind of looked at in some ways as the American way, you know?
Pretty much.
And should it? I don't know.
The level of debt service that the United States is taking on right now, and the amount of the amount that they're spending. Yeah. And the fact that we're just asking for an extension on the debt ceiling again, we just keep moving the goalposts. We're not going to put political undertones beyond that comment, but they're moving the goalposts.
It's just ridiculous that this is a conversation that happens every 6 months or a year, you know.
Yeah.
And
what's the credit score?
Yeah, well, and the part of the thing that we have a problem with, that I have a problem with, is that there are real people affected by this political whatever going on, and the misspending of our government. And, you know, whether it be a park ranger, whatever, you know, they're getting put on furlough or whatnot, you know, that's not fair to put these people through. Not. They're hardworking Americans that are out there servicing us as people, you know, that when you go to the national park, you want somebody there to, you know.
You would associate with someone being there.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it just, yeah. Yep. So we got to get that all figured out, but that's more of a political thing than it should be, probably, where I don't think household debt necessarily is. Some people think it is.
You know, the part about this, Matt, that I really think that people at home need to think about is the idea that you don't associate with having a P&L for your household like you would a business.
What do you mean a P&L?
Profit and loss statement.
Correct.
Where you are in a situation where, think of like the revenue that you bring home from your job every day is what's covering your own family's debt service.
Yep.
And within that debt service, You have some fixed expenses that you're going to count on having to pay every month. Like how many people have student loans? How many people have a mortgage? Yep. The reality is that a lot of people are taking on their student loans again after being on this the student loan forgiveness plan, which was going on since COVID.
Yeah.
And now those people are having to start to pay on those student loans again on top of everything else that they have going on. Not to mention the credit card rates. The interest rates on the credit cards are super high.
Yeah, the interest rates, and that's a deal. It goes back to the Fed that we've talked about in previous shows with you, and all of that is all interwoven. It is, and it's something that if you don't understand it, if you're not up on it, if you're not reading the newspaper or reading news articles about where it's at and why this is affecting and why it's changing and why it's different, you're not going to really have a very good understanding of some of that stuff. So some of the things that I pulled up was 32% of Americans' monthly income goes towards paying debt. 32% of every paycheck goes towards paying debt in some way, shape, or form.
When we qualify someone for a home mortgage, they're typically being told that you should get a house payment that's around 28% of your gross monthly income. And for a lot of people I interview, they don't want a payment that's that high.
Yeah.
But then you take and you make interest rates back to levels that we haven't seen in 30 years. And now people are having to resort to that in order for them to hit the house price that they're trying to get to, or whatever the case may be. Interest rates are going to come down. We're going to be able to refinance. So we're going to go with the higher payment at the outset. And then the part about it that comes in where you get to a spot where you have some credit cards that you previously, with the lower interest rate environment we used to be in, you could pay those cards off in full every month.
Yep.
And you would not accrue any interest on those credit cards.
Yep.
But now maybe some folks are having to hang on to those credit cards and carry that debt
21%
over month after month after month.
Yeah.
And it's going to cause that situation to snowball.
With that being said, let's talk about just breaking down some of the basic types of household debt that everyone's going to understand. Now, there are different ways to look at types, the word types, as far as household debt is concerned. Basically, everybody's going to have understand what a mortgage is. You're going to have a mortgage on your home, generally speaking, until you've paid that mortgage off, in which you're mortgage free, which usually takes 20 to 30 years.
And we remind everyone now with these higher interest rates that if you make one extra mortgage payment per year, the equal, like if you took your payment divided it by 12, added it to the balance or to the amount you're paying each month, you would make, instead of making 12 payments, you would essentially make 13 payments, or you could do biweekly and then make 26 half payments.
And the amount you'd chop off at the end,
it's about 7 years.
Is crazy. Yeah.
7 years of payments.
Crazy. Yeah.
And that's because interest on a mortgage is compounding, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yep. We'll get into that. Credit cards. Everybody's got credit cards. If you don't have a credit card, you got a problem. And
you should have at least 2 to 3 credit cards that you're using with discipline.
Yeah, with discipline. And credit cards are just, they need to be a part of your financial portfolio. It's just
the algorithms on the credit bureaus are the main reason.
In order to maintain a credit card, or a credit score, you need to have them and you need to utilize them, which sounds kind of back-ass words, right? But that just is what it is, and we're going to get into that. Student loans, we talked briefly about it. We're going to talk some more about that. Vehicle loans, vehicle prices, I mean, $40,000 gets you into a bottom-end car these days, right?
The average person that's going and getting a brand new car right now has got a car payment north of $600 if they're not doing a decent down payment.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I did some loose calculations last night, and I'm like, just to get a $30,000 vehicle on a 6-year loan, you're looking at a $515 payment. It's like, holy cow! Just is what it is. Personal loans come in all different shapes and sizes. It could be for an ATV, it could be for a boat, could be for school loan, different way to pay school loans, right? What else would you get personal loans for?
Snowmobile. If you were going to go and get a ring for your wife,
pool installed.
You're going to get a big pool in your backyard.
Get a roof replaced. All of those would be
home improvement loan. Solar panels.
Yep, solar panels. That's a whole nother topic. Yeah, so we'll get there on that. But so personal loans come in all different shapes and sizes, and they are usually what is considered secured debt. In that there is
they put a lien against something.
Yeah, they can put a lien against. There's something they can put a lien against, but there are personal loans that there isn't a lien against, and it's unsecured debt, and that is a little bit more.
We've been seeing a lot more that are collateralized by the house lately than we had in
where
the
they're
past.
Making you put it on there instead of
as a lien,
taking your word for it type of stuff. Yep. And then medical debt. Medical debt is a tough one. You know, there are some people that carry and have a lot of medical debt because they had a lot of health issues and didn't have good insurance, you know? And so those people, when it comes to that medical debt, you can try to negotiate with the medical facilities and things
billing
like
department.
That. Yeah, billing departments and stuff like that. There are government programs that if you didn't make, if you don't make X number of dollars, you can get some assistance with some of that stuff, you know? But medical debt's a real thing hanging over some people's heads, you know?
Collections, medical collections.
Yeah, and that it can destroy you, you know, as far as not only the phone calls and the stress and stuff like that, but the what it does to your credit score.
Forcing the hand on people. There was some legislation introduced last year where they talked about if your collection was less than $500, it gets expunged from the credit bureau completely, like deleted completely, no questions asked.
Yeah, so they're not going to destroy you for $500.
Right.
Yeah.
Fun fact though, if you contact the collection agency over a medical debt, chances are if you pay them in full and you talk nice to them, they will delete it.
Oh, okay.
If it's medical.
Sure.
And that's a tactic that a lot of mortgage lenders use frequently because we're so sensitive to credit scores now on how we price interest rates for home loans.
Yeah, for sure. And that credit score is not only for home loans, but it's your car insurance, everything else. And when you guys are working with a quality mortgage lender like Bill, they'll help you kind of, okay, so your credit score is not here to get this loan product, but what can we do to get it here? You know what I mean? You can take out some of that stuff and take some of those steps or whatever. And Bill knows those intricacies.
Rapid rescores.
Yeah.
Let's get the score fixed in a 30-day time span, something like that.
So you can still get the house that you wanted at the interest rates and things like that you were looking for. So kind of in the realm of debt that some people carry, but it is kind of that regular expense that you have to deal with, you know, is taxes. Taxes is a different type of debt, but it is still debt that you're going to have to pay at the end of the year, whether you want to or not. It's just part of the deal. Now, lots of times when you set up a mortgage, your taxes and stuff are being escrowed.
Correct. Escrow, like a forced savings account, it's in your payment.
Yep. And do you guys, so when Bank 59 does a mortgage, do you guys use escrow taxes? Do you escrow your homeowner's insurance too?
The majority of the time.
Yeah. Okay. And that's like a requirement, or is it something that you suggest?
When you have at least 20% equity in your property, you're not required to do an escrow, but most people do.
Yeah, it just makes sense. And that way you don't have to worry about it.
It's paid automatically. You don't have to worry about it. The one thing that we all have to think about now, though, more so than ever, is I'm hearing from insurance agents increased premiums across all lines of insurance because of the cost of claims. Average cost of claims has risen significantly. And we're seeing some people who are putting some extra money into their escrow accounts, build up the cushion a little bit. Most financial loan servicers usually keep a 2-month reserve in there for that. But if you don't want your payment to get bumped up unexpectedly at the end of the first quarter of next year because you didn't have enough money in there.
Yeah. And it's, I was talking to my insurance broker the other day, and basically a lot of the insurance companies get hit really hard, you know, and their bottom line is not where it's supposed to be.
Shrinking.
You know, it's shrinking dramatically. And while I don't really feel bad for them, you know, on one foot, I need them to still be there and not take it too hard, you know, because I need them to exist. But when Acuity starts building this great big huge building over along I-43 and
it's a fancy building.
I'm like, dude, that's what I'm paying for, you know. And
the American flag is like the kind of same kind as the one they have at Lambeau.
Oh my God, it's ginormous, dude. It's like the size. It's like a football field flapping in the wind, you know. But so I don't necessarily feel sorry for them, but at the same time, I need them to exist. And
we actually have Acuity.
Finding a way to make insurance affordable and still allow them to offer good products is I guess where I would love to see that all hashed down. Instead, what they're doing is they're doubling down on you know, premiums and stuff and jacking up the premiums. It's hard to balance it out. And part of it's inflation, part of it's lack of labor force. There's a lot of little pieces that work into this, you know, the unheard of hailstorms that we've had, you know, in recent years and stuff like that, all played a role in all this, you know.
The possibility that in certain markets where there's constantly having hurricanes every year, that the notion that people might someday not be able to get the level of insurance they need.
Taxes, utilities, insurance, all expenses that you're going to have to pay as a part of owning a home or having a household. One of the things that comes in that you hear a lot when people are talking about debt is good debt versus bad debt.
Yeah, let's chunk it down.
Good debt. Basically, we're talking about debt that has a positive outcome as a result of the debt, and that generally has little downside, right? And bad debt would be debt that can get out of whack quickly and compounds interest regularly and can be out of control, and if not managed strictly, you can get kind of crazy with. So like title loans, payday loans, credit cards, vehicle loans, all that kind of stuff is considered bad debt, because your car, once you drive it off the lot, it's going to just depreciate, right? It's worth what did they say?
It's the depreciating asset.
Yeah, $5,000 less than what it was worth 2 seconds ago before you drove off the lot.
Yep.
Now, good debt, what we're talking about there, real estate debt, business debt. I loosely add student loans into that one.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was just watching a national news story before I came to the studio tonight, and I was, seeing how the guys and gals that join the trades have a higher propensity for having a higher average income out of an apprenticeship program than someone that even went and got a bachelor's degree now.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of companies that are actually advocating for accepting 2-year degrees instead of 4-year degrees, because they don't really see that it makes a huge difference if people have check all the other boxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all that said, the student loan debt situation is something where people have to be mindful of the fact that it shouldn't stop them from buying a house. Mm-hmm. The fact that there are income-based repayment plans for student loans. Yep. If you asked the U.S. Department of Education student loan program, the ability to get something called the extended level repayment plan, which is a much, much lower payment. You find this balance to say, Matt, if I gave you 2 choices, are you going to pay this debt off in big lump installments, or are you going to make this payment manageable so that you can go and do the things in your life you expected to do when you graduated?
Yeah, that you want to do. And in some cases, they're talking about long term. They're talking about 25 years or 30 years. You know what I mean? So that's a hard question for a 23-year-old kid.
And also, too, if I said to you, you're going to come out of school with $80,000 to $100,000 in student loan debt, and your salary out of school is going to be $65,000-$70,000 a year.
But what ends up happening is it doesn't equate with what the payment they're asking for is.
Right.
Where the problem comes in, which we'll get in a little bit into that. So as far as when the financial types talk about debt, they talk about secured and unsecured, and they talk about revolving and installment debt, right? If you were to talk about the 4 types that they would consider ever secured versus unsecured, secured debt is something that's got it backed by an asset. So something like
collateral.
That's got collateral, right? And then you talk about like putting your home on a loan and that kind of stuff, attaching that as the collateral for that. Like when you get a car loan, the car is collateral,
there's a lien against it.
Yeah, there's a lien against it. The bank has a lien against it. So there is collateral there. But unsecured debt is where the borrower is bound by just contractual agreement. That it's
typically
your word.
The terms are not favorable.
Yeah.
The interest rate on an unsecured loan is basically that they're going to make enough of those loans that they're hedging, that if a couple of those loans go bad, they still made enough money on that type of a product that the financial institution came out ahead. After all, what are we talking about here today? We're talking about arbitrage. Yeah. Arbitrage is borrowing money at a lower rate and lending it out to you or me at a higher rate. Mm-hmm. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, yeah. And when it comes to those unsecured debts, know that you're going to pay a higher interest. You're going to have a more aggressive compounded interest, and those types of things will be a part of that conversation. Yeah, because it's a riskier product. Okay, even though your word may be very good, maybe your credit score is very good, it is still a riskier product that they haven't got an easy means to go back and collect on that loan.
The biggest trigger for the unsecured installment loans now is preying on people who got upside down in credit card debt, where they're on a variable rate credit card that they got maxed out, and they try to do balance transfers enough times to the point where they can't do it anymore. Yeah. And now you're in a position where you don't maybe have access to a home equity line of credit or using another means. So you go and get a installment personal loan that's not collateralized.
Yeah. Yeah. Payday loan or title loan or whatever it may be. Title loan is somewhat collateralized, but it's usually they're lending more than what you're.
I'm not gonna name names, but I will say this: all the credit bureaus are selling your information. You go and apply for a mortgage. They give your name to 30 different lenders to call or text you to try and see if they can give you a quote. And the same thing goes with these. If you find out all the credit inquiries that are happening behind the curtain, for all those things that you get in the mail, to solicit you to say, oh, we got a solution for all your credit cards.
Yeah. That whole thing with the credit bureaus kind of gets me because like there's three of them, right? TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Those are the only three options that we really have, and they're kind of government regulated-ish, but they're not really, And so but they get all this personal information on you and all this other kind of stuff, but then they get to go out and sell it.
There's a class action right now going against the credit bureaus from them being able to, and it's already been a bill that's been submitted for consideration.
Yeah.
For the credit bureaus to not be able to sell. It's called, for those of you keeping score, it's called trigger leads.
Trigger leads. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Just like it sounds like. It would be, someone will say to me, oh, hey, Bill, why am I getting texted or called by 15 lenders? Well, I pulled your credit this morning, Matt, and now bureau sold your information. People get really upset about that. Yeah. The situation that we encounter now is it's kind of getting to the point where it's sleazy.
Oh yeah, and my son, he wanted to go on and freeze his credit so he couldn't get taken advantage of and stuff like that. So we went on and froze his credit, all three credit bureaus or whatever, so nobody could go claim his name or whatever. Else. And all of a sudden, he's getting all kinds of emails soliciting for credit cards and all this other stuff, and it's all linked up to these credit bureaus. I'm like, what the?
Tammy, if you want to put it in the comments, optoutprescreen.com.
Optoutprescreen.com.
OPT, opt-out pre-screen. I'm enunciating.
Yeah.
Optoutprescreen.com is where you go to put your name on a list where you will not be able to be solicited for 5 years. If you have a credit inquiry, they won't sell your information because they're not allowed to.
We'll go there later tonight because
we enroll all our customers in it right out of the gate before we pull their credit.
Yeah, it just, you guys, you're here. You're supposed to be, keeping our stuff separated from the general, Instead, you're going out there making money on it, And granted, you have to have operating costs, but that's what you get. That when you pull a hard inquiry, you guys have to pay for that, right? Or there's
yes, we do.
There, yeah.
And not only that, but they raise the prices of credit bureaus significantly at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 23.
That's crazy that
a credit report for a couple at the mortgage office is over $100.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and there's so many things that people are trying to get money for now. Like Tammy said, now they're talking about charging for iHeartRadio, to listen to iHeartRadio on your Alexa or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, like all the ad revenue is not enough. Now they got to pinch Joe Public, for it.
Yeah.
All, and it's
like another surcharge.
Yeah, it's a whole mess. So yeah, and so that is secured and unsecured, revolving and installment debt. Want to explain those two?
Yeah. So, We've been kind of weaving in and weaving out of revolving versus installment, but basically as a lender, we consider the algorithms on the credit bureau to be impacted greatly by proportion of revolving debt utilization. So if you're over 30% of your credit card limit, you're going to see your credit score start to drop. The closer you get to maxing it out, you're going to see your credit score drop because it's a layer of risk.
Yeah.
When we talk about the person who goes and gets the installment debt, on installment debt in the literal sense of the words, it's we gave you a loan that we gave you somewhere between 12 months and up to pay it off. Yeah. And you wanted to get get some furniture, get a jewelry for your spouse, or you wanted to go and buy a jet ski or a car loan. Yep. The credit bureaus don't look at the installment debt with a negative connotation to it like they do credit cards. Yeah. If you're the type of person that has 3 credit cards and they're all maxed out, you could be paying your bills on time every month, but your credit score could still be 50 to 100 points below the next person because they consider it a layer of risk that you can't manage that obligation in the way that you are given this much credit available to you, but you've used it all up.
Yeah, they think that less than 30% is a responsible utilization.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're talking about. You got to have credit cards and you've got to use them. That's the utilization. If you don't use it at all, it actually negatively impacts your credit score. So yeah, next thing we're going to talk about simple interest versus compound interest. That's complicated, I
got a simple way of describing it.
Give it to me.
So simple interest is basically if you take the loan amount times the percentage of interest divided by the length of the loan divided by the term. So if I had a $1,000 loan and I was going to get charged 6% interest, take the sum of the interest and divide it by 12. That's simple interest.
Okay.
If you do compounding interest, you're basically, it's interest on top of interest. So let's say I had that same scenario and I had $60 of interest for the year. And let's say I kept that loan for 5 years. And let's say over the course of the first 4 years, it accrued $240 worth because we went 4 months in on the $60 a year.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to pay interest on top of that interest. So that's considered in the bucket.
Yeah.
We like to call it interest on interest.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to get into a little student loan conversation here in a little bit, but student loan interest, compounding interest.
Yes.
Is
and mortgages are also compounding interest.
Which is part of the big problem with student loans. And what I think there's an easy solution to some of that. But so simple interest versus compound interest, great way of looking at it. Now, the next thing we're talking about is ways to limit your debt exposure. So we've talked about like HELOCs, and we've talked about cash out refis and some other ways that you can access funds that you have available that you may not even know you have available to pay down some of these unsecured, revolving, credit card debts and things like that, and eliminate some of that debt. But you can't use all of it,
Right.
You want to manage your debt responsibly, and by doing some of those things in a good way, like getting that HELOC, home equity line of credit, or doing some other ways that we can manage the debt in our household in good ways to not only maximize our, I guess, value that we have in the property that we already own,
And there's a substantial amount of equity in most of the homes now because of the level of appreciation that everyone has been achieving or incurring just because by virtue of lack of supply. That's another story.
Yeah.
But we're in a spot right now where we are getting more home equity loan requests than we have received in years because people don't want to stay on top of those credit cards, or they have some expenses that they're encountering, but that every other bucket that you would pull from to cover the cost of funds, the interest is too high.
Yeah.
So for those of you that wonder, what's the baseline for the interest rate on a home equity line of credit? And it's the prime rate. And we've talked about that in other episodes, that the prime rate is 3% over the discount rate.
Yep.
So the discount rate that's the Fed's short-term cost of funds to financial institutions. Yep. The prime rate is what your benchmark is for auto loans, credit cards, home equity loans, et cetera. Notice I said benchmark. It's like the baseline.
Yeah. Everybody can be a little bit different.
Yeah. And if you were in a situation where you wanted to go get a home equity line of credit, you can get usually the best interest rate up to 80% of the value of your house. But once you go over 80%, they're going to start charging you higher interest surcharges for amount of equity you have used up on your house or your credit score.
Yeah. And while we are not tax professionals, there's also tax benefits there as well.
There can be some tax benefits.
Can be, yeah. As far as using the debt that's in your home or whatever, it's usually going to be more friendly than 21% interest
Absolutely.
on a credit card.
That's why all the lenders right now are seeing so many more requests for the home equity lines.
Yep.
Definitely something that people want to keep an eye out for.
If you're carrying $20,000 in credit card debt and you've had your home for 5 years, call Bill the banker. He will help you figure a way through that and save you a ton of money. Okay. And but a home equity credit is not a magic wand that makes it disappear. However, makes it much more manageable.
I got to a point when I was like in 2013, 2014, I was in a spot when interest rates weren't doing that great and I was having a tough time. I've been in the mortgage industry for 23 years. I had a credit card, a home equity loan that got to the end of the draw period.
Okay.
It was 10 years.
Yeah.
So once you get to the end of that draw period, it switches to principal and interest. So for anyone out there that's going to have a home equity loan, and like Matt just said, it's not an end all because you can keep kicking the can down the road. But the reality is if you do that, you're going to end up, it'll catch up with you.
When it turns into principal and interest, by the way, what Bill's saying is that it basically puts you on an amortization schedule and it gives you a final pay down point and a required
usually like on a 10-year amortization or something like that. Yep. Usually a lot of times people end up having to refinance those.
And even if you slip into that or whatever, that you just lost track of this HELOC and you're just making payments and using it or bouncing in and out, whatever it may be, when you get to that point, you can always look into refinancing and things like that. So there's always options to be had there. But so that's good ways to manage your debt. And then there's bad ways you can manage your debt. Just ignoring it, just letting that credit card debt blow, and that interest rate when you have a credit card, the interest rate fluctuates so much, and when it goes skyrocket to 21, do you think the credit cards company is going to come to you and say, hey, would you like a lower credit score?
Or you took the introductory 24-month financing and they told you what it's going to backload the interest that you got deferred if you don't pay it by the end of the due date period.
Tammy, can I share? No?
Yeah, go ahead, because I lost the date
I wasn't blaming you.
I know, but I feel like I'm at fault.
So you're not at fault. So we bought for the business, we bought a new sewer scope, a Milwaukee Milwaukee pipeline sewer scope, which
I like how you asked permission, by the way. That was good on you.
I don't want to get if it was a hard no, she would just stared at me. She wouldn't talk to you even, But so we bought this on our Home Depot credit card, 0% interest or whatever, and all you pay it off in the next year. So I'm like, okay, well, honey, we're going to get this thing. It'll be 0% interest. In the first year, we should, make enough money to pay the thing off, whatever, And
a side note, all of those have always been a year. We've taken advantage of them numerous times, and it's been a year. This one was 6 months.
We thought it was.
And I goofed.
So then all of a sudden, that interest that had not been there, all of a sudden, boop,
I did it once.
Pops in
I
there,
did it once, and it was over $900.
Yeah, and
I did it once.
We were 3 weeks late. 3 weeks late on realizing that, because as soon as we saw that pop in there, we're like,
it only happens once. You never let it happen again.
Yeah, but you know what? It was one of those things, 0% interest. But just because they give you 0% interest doesn't mean that it goes away. But if you don't pay it off in that period, then that interest over that period, boop, comes back. It
goes right back on.
Then it gets start charging.
They're betting against you.
Yeah, exactly. And they're just trying to get us in there to buy it from them instead of buying it from someplace else. So that kind of stuff can happen. So using the debt properly is important. Managing the debt with other sources that you have for revenue is important. What
about budgeting tools?
Yeah, limiting and budgeting and that kind of stuff for sure. So limiting your debt exposure, budgeting tools are huge. Now, there are a number of online budget options, that you can go to, and it'll help you basically develop a household budget and things like that based on what your income is and all that kind of stuff. It kind of gets you to look at it objectively and break it down, because you don't think about all the little things. You don't think about the daily cup of coffee at Starbucks every day, and that kind of stuff.
I think that, and I've been in so many interviews with a couple where, okay, I'm gonna be like the mediator, and I'm gonna say, you're only allowed to talk if you have this in front of you. And then the other person want to just go at it and say something back. Because the reality of the situation is, talking about the P&L like we opened up with at the beginning of our time together today, you do have some tools that give you some of those bitter realities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes the conversation a little bit more. It's still a difficult conversation to have with your spouse or whoever your significant other is, because you both are relying financially on each other, but it is still a conversation that you need to have. And if you can develop a budget that's responsible and that is gonna, do what it needs to do for you, it can help you really find success. And
today I went to nerdwallet.com and I found right off the top 8 different places that you can get a free budgeting tool. I'm not going to name them off. You can go look at them and research for yourself. But the idea that you would know that you have money in certain buckets for certain things, and that the discretionary bucket is the one that in your mind you want to fill first, but it's really the one you have to fill last.
Yeah, and there's guys out there that talk about the envelope method and all that other.
I had that one written down.
Yeah, basically putting the money that you have to spend in these different things in different envelopes and stuff like that. Cash is sometimes harder to do.
Metaphorically speaking, that envelope rule is you say you're going to start out at the beginning of the month with this amount, and you're going to divert the money in each direction, but it's that self-discipline that you got to stick with it. Because like I'd say to my daughter, who's 19 and a half years old, you have a credit card or a debit card now. Do you psychologically part with the money the same way you used to before you had that way of living?
Yeah.
You don't. You don't associate with it. It just goes.
It just goes. And my one of my sons or whatever was having a credit card, and it wasn't registering that this is still money I have to pay back.
Yeah.
And so it kind of it was hard for him to kind of and now he's getting it that this is an expense. I'm gonna have to pay this back just because it feels free right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it is free.
Right.
You know, and understanding that there's when you have that credit card makes the things really easy sometimes when it comes to that. You know.
Yeah.
So you got to be disciplined, and then also coming up with a plan. You know, plan ahead. You know, what is next? What's my plan for next year financially? What do we want to accomplish? What does 5 years look like? What does 10 years look like? You know, and if you don't have a plan, man, when you get to that 10 years, you're going to be hurt.
We got really clear with saving goals when we felt like we went too long without a vacation.
Yeah.
When you said that you're not going to put the vacation on your credit card to go on a vacation like too many people do nowadays, especially with the cost of airfare and Airbnbs and all that stuff.
Yep.
So there are actually some really great apps besides the budgeting ones that will monitor your spending habits and take a certain amount of dollars out of your checking account every single week, just here and there.
Yeah. Yep.
And I did that to buy a new bicycle that I wanted that was expensive because I like cycling.
Yeah.
And that was a very effective way for me to save the money because I honestly didn't even feel like I was missing it.
Yeah.
And that's a really good example. The other thing that some people will do too is they will put themselves on a plan if they can to justify maybe leaning into their 401k and taking a 401k loan, but then you're no longer having that money being invested.
Yeah.
And you also have to make sure that you're not going to leave the company because then the note you borrowed becomes automatically due.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to steal from your 401. So I'm a big one, like, don't take anything from retirement. Anything you put into retirement
Stays there.
Stays there. You don't. That is off limits because as soon as you start messing with that, then what happens when you're 63 years old or whatever, and you got to charge collect Social Security? Guess what? You get what a Social Security is, $1,300 a month. It's not very much, and you're not going to be able to survive on that, in a fashion that you want to survive.
I completely
one of the
agree.
things that was on TV a lot, but remember Acorn? Or I think Acorn's still out there, but that's an investment thing.
That's
another
another
one.
one.
Basically, take the change from your transactions or whatever, and they all your credit card charges are even dollar amounts, but the difference they automatically are investing in whatever you.
Yeah, and there
what to
actually
invest in,
were ones, I think Acorn might have been the one where they actually would treat your savings habit like a form of credit. So they would actually report to the credit bureau.
Yeah. So there's lots of good options out there, but there's lots of choices. But finding some sort of way to manage your budget, and whether it's through technology or just sitting down making a spreadsheet, whatever it may be, doing something is better than doing nothing, people. So take something there. The thing that always comes up at the end of the discussion with people that are in over their head with debt is the B word, right? And
Going BK.
yeah, we're talking bankruptcy, and it really should be your absolute last resort. The hole's so deep you can't get out, and it's just that it's absolute last resort. Because when people think of bankruptcy, they think it's a free out. Nobody's going to be able to get. That's not how it works.
So we do. This year, I've done mortgages for 3 families that had filed Chapter 13 bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And I had to show compensating factors for them to be able to take out a mortgage. I had to have the bankruptcy trustee write a letter of recommendation to say that they had permission to buy a house, and those people could only get an FHA loan. They could not get a conventional mortgage. So you're making a commitment that you can't go back on.
7-year decision, isn't it?
It's for a Chapter 7. You're looking at 4 years for conventional and 2 years for FHA.
Okay. All right. So you could still,
Now, foreclosure is longer.
Yeah.
The waiting period on foreclosures is longer, but for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy with conventional mortgages, 4 years. And 2 years for FHA.
And we hear too much about the B word just from businesses and companies, and that's a business decision, and that's different in many ways. But ultimately, bankruptcy should really be your absolute last resort.
There are some people that just needed to go BK because they were just too far in.
Yeah, there was too far in. There was no way for them to climb out,
or it was medical.
It could be medical. Medical can get you over your head real quick. Yeah. And then sometimes people will talk about ways we can use debt to get ahead, and they try to take out money and then invest it in whatever. And sometimes it works, but it is
more often than not it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's gambling. You're gambling, and you're gambling with your livelihood.
So the financial planners that I follow, they talk about discouraging people to use margin accounts, which basically that's what it is.
Yeah.
If you're going to take a home equity line of credit and buy crypto or stocks with it, you're not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah,
we'll say.
Exactly. And especially on some of these things where your house is collateral and things like that. That goes south. That investment that you made doesn't work out. Guess what? You're
pledging the equity of your house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where your kid's going to sleep at night,
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Put yourself in a pinch.
Yep. The next thing, just quickly, how does debt relating to credit score? We've kind of bounced around a little bit, and debt can, in some ways, be good for your credit score. Like we talked about having and utilizing a responsible level of debt, which was what, 30%, less than 30%?
On credit cards, yeah. I mean, I've witnessed customers that have at least 10 mortgages. I witnessed customers that have multiple auto loans, and it all has to do with the algorithms based on the repayment and the how much of it's being utilized.
Yeah. And now when it comes to that 30%, is there a low end that's too low?
Well, if you were talking about too low, it would be like if your credit card went dormant for a long enough period of time where the creditor decided to close it. If you had a credit card, Matt, that was, let's say it was, you remember Yonkers?
Yeah.
Or Boston store?
Yeah, Macy's.
So you wouldn't want those cards to close if you could avoid it if the place wasn't going belly up, because that credit card represents one of the oldest trade lines on your credit report, and that's fueling the algorithm. So you should just use them periodically.
Yeah, and seeing that you have that $10,000 available to you, now that increases your total available credit to $10,000, and that gives you $3,000 as long as you're using less than $3,000 of utilization on that. You're in.
It's contributing towards the overall picture.
Yeah, that's helping your credit score by doing that and using it. What would once a month? What would be
once every 30 60 days.
Yeah, and just using it once in a while. And it doesn't have to be for huge transactions, and you can pay it off right away, but there needs to be some sort of utilization or activity on the card to maintain that.
And the ones that I have that are like that I'm not using regularly, I just have I got a recurring bill coming off of it, but then I have it just set to pay it off every month.
Sure, so that it's automatically going to every 6 months you get a charge for this or whatever, or your club membership or whatever that may be. Yeah,
pay it in full and no interest.
Yep. And debt can affect your credit score in a lot of bad ways, which we've talked about amply here. And then there's some ways that debt sometimes doesn't make any sense, like not using your credit card, not having credit cards. So I don't have any credit card debt. Why does that hurt me? Is a question you hear from people, especially younger people that don't understand,
Well, and there are some people, like I occasionally will listen to Dave Ramsey or some of the other influencers that are out there, and they basically will tell some people to just straight up cut up their credit cards
and be debt free, and but at that point you're hurting yourself in your credit score, because a credit score is they're kind of looking at you through this lens that they've developed by understanding your financial picture. Okay. And that lens has this credit element in it that if you don't have that, it makes you look like you're not reliable because you aren't managing debt. If you can't show that you can manage the debt, they're going to look at you as less of you're a greater risk.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. You're ultimately, if you were in a situation where you didn't want to have your own cards and use them yourself, you could be on, like my daughter, I add her as an authorized user on my credit card. And if it's one that I'm using sparingly and being responsible with it, it helps her out because that credit history will spill over onto her credit history. We've talked about that in some other shows. But it's also another good thing.
Now, as we are in there, one of the things that comes up lots of times is real estate the best kind of debt there is?
I personally think so because I've said, well, for one, it's an appreciating asset. For two, the cost of interest in the grand scheme of things isn't as much about the loan as the fact that it's putting your home and your family in a lifestyle. And it's basically one of the main anchors for every family. Yeah. So I personally believe that the advent of Airbnbs and all that kind of stuff, we're talking a lot about people who want to go out and buy a 1 to 2 unit property or something like that. I actually did a post today on social about kiddie condos where, like my daughter, like I was telling you earlier, she's going to start going to college out of town. And what about getting like a condo where she's on the loan with me and we put 5% down and her name's on it.
Yeah.
And then her friends come and board with her and pay some rent towards it.
That all looks good
Those
for
are
her.
all real estate.
Yeah.
It's a win.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and not only like you talk about it as an appreciated, it's always, I mean, real estate historically usually 2% to 3% conservatively value increase annually. Recently, it's been much higher than that, but that is not sustainable. It's not something to count on. Okay,
right? I agree.
But at the same time, when you're making your payments and stuff like that, you're paying it down, and it just because you're gaining that equity in there on the backside of it as well. So yeah, it's a win-win, I think, as far as real estate goes. But understanding that getting in over your head in real estate can happen too.
Absolutely.
And sometimes real estate can involve gambles, and you got to be careful with some of that stuff as well. So making sure you're working with a good mortgage lender, making sure you're working with a good real estate agent. Look up Bill the Banker at Bank 59 or Team Smith, Wisconsin would be another good option to go with. Hopefully, we're going to have Mark on next week, or one of our favorites, one of his minions from his team there, come on and talk to us. I guess right along that same line, we had the top 5 things that can hurt your credit score, and we talked briefly about that, I think, in another one. But top 5 things that can hurt your credit score.
If I was going to rapid fire, just blast those off, I would tell you. The most obvious ones that people associate with are obviously making a late payment. Mm-hmm. For anyone watching this video, if you do one thing right, do not go 30 days past the due date, because that's when the credit report gets dinged. Number 2, avoid those collections at all costs. Yep. Medical collections are easier to get out of, but the other types of collections that are not easier to get out of would be your non-medical ones. Yep. And then number 3, if you were in a situation where you have the high credit utilization ratio, another one would be stop paying on an auto loan or an installment loan completely, or a credit card. That's called a P&L write-off. Yep. And then the last one would be the worst ones would be your repossessions or your foreclosures.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Hard inquiries, soft inquiries, not that as big of a deal, but having too many of them.
Well, you have 45 days to get installment loan inquiries for auto loans or mortgages. Mm-hmm. But if you get credit card inquiries, those are counted one for one. Yeah. And generally speaking, if you're not going out and having a party over the course of a 6-month period, the credit score will drop for about 30 days. And if someone's using it as a scare tactic to tell you not to shop around for a mortgage or an installment loan, it's just because they don't want you to check around. Yeah. You have 45 days to check around.
And it's not going to hurt your credit score at all.
Right.
It's going to count as one inquiry as long as you're within.
They made it so you can shop.
Yep, exactly. What sets one lender apart from the next? Well, we're talking about you versus U.S. Bank or whatever.
So really, it has a lot to do with education. It is if you are a certified mortgage planner, if you've gone through the education, if you've had all the continuing education like I've had, you do stuff with spreadsheets. You are actually showing people truly the difference in what something's costing them versus just quoting a rate or just being an order taker, taking a loan application and trying to process it. Yeah. What we're doing is we're helping people accumulate wealth and manage their debt wisely, be good stewards of their debt. Yeah. That's the difference. And when I talk to someone, like one thing we didn't really talk about a ton today is what should you pay off first if you're going to try and get out from under your debt? Yeah. And there's 2 strategies that answer to that piece. The first one is naturally you should cross out the interest rate on all your debts and just pay off the smallest debts first until you can keep chipping away at them where you actually have more money from that one payment to dedicate to the next one.
Yep. And that can snowball.
They call it the snowball.
Keep rolling that, and next thing you know, you're attacking these things. And one of the things that happens a lot of times is people try to over attack their debt, and they try to go after everything. And if all you do is pay a little bit on each one,
you don't feel like you
get anywhere. You're climbing up the hill, but you feel you're in baby steps. Where if you attack that little thing, it could be
get one eliminated.
But don't think that because that $200 payment is gone, that $200 shouldn't just get spent on whatever. No, take that $200, apply it to the next lowest one, and just keep pound through it. Yeah.
The other thing we tell people when they're trying to buy a house, you want to pay off the obligation that has the smallest balance but the highest payment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in order for you to qualify for something more, if you think about it, the payment matters more when you're qualifying for the house than the debt, than the balance.
Yeah, it gets your snowball bigger faster.
It does.
Yeah.
So those are some in summary, those are some things that separate lenders. There is a lot to all of those facets of things in being concise in the way you present the information.
Yeah, and Bill, 23 years of lending experience. That's knowledge that you can't just go out and get. You can't go to WCTC and get 23 years of lending experience, you know. And Bill's got it for you. BillTheBanker.com. You can give him a call. Look him up on Bank 59. He's got his whole profile on there and stuff like that. Yeah, great guy. If you're looking for that way to manage your debt, way to get on a home equity line of credit, looking for a mortgage, look up Bill Moeller at Bank 59. He'd be a great resource for you.
Thank you.
And just he's happy to you give him a call. He's happy to talk to you about whatever. You got questions or whatever. It's not that you come in to see him and he is instantly going to hit you up to sign up for a mortgage or anything. He's just going to be a great resource for you. And when it comes time for that mortgage, you know that you got somebody there you can trust. So that makes all the difference in the world. Thanks again for tuning in, you guys. I really appreciate you. If you don't mind, go to BillTheBanker.com, look him up or whatever, check him out, and refer him to your friends and family. Thanks again for tuning in today, you guys. Remember, the better you take care of your house, the better
It'll take care of you.
You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.